Yes. This is my buddy Copper. In this video, this is Copper's roadmap to success. Now Copper, again, started off in another home where he was kenneled too long. They withheld water from him, probably because he was in a kennel for so long they didn't want to have accidents, but that's not ethical to withhold food or water from dogs. And he has a resource guarding problem. Now he could potentially guard my bag here. So I just think I don't want him in there. I just reach over absentmindedly. I might turn it into a bite. So be careful if there's new stuff in your house and your dog's investigating it. Better thing to do, and I actually went over this earlier, he had a bully stick. And he didn't, and the guardian's like, oh, he's not gonna do anything when he has a bully stick. So what I did is I dropped the treat on the ground near him. He was laying on the ground. As soon as he opened his mouth and dropped the bully stick, I said yes, which is the marker word I'm gonna talk about in a sec, and then he got the treat. So I gave him incentive to drop, and I didn't touch the bully stick. So he's more comfortable. And that's something I probably should have gone over in the session. I'll go over the drop cue later on, but really what you do is when he has something he's allowed to have, like this thing, it works better when you get it on cue. So if he had it in his mouth, yes. You just pull out a treat, hold it in front of his nose. This is what's called a low value item. It's one of his toys, he really likes it, but it's not the same thing as a bully stick. So when he has a low value item, that's a great way to practice because it's easier level. He's not so interested in guarding it because he never seemed to really want this thing. Drop, yes. So when you're using a cue, we don't want to use the cue. The cue was the word drop until I'm pretty certain he's going to do what I want him to do. So I'm going to wait for him to get it. I'm just going to have a treat ready. So if he gets a toy, just quietly pull out a couple treats. And you see how he looked at me, so I kind of stopped my movement. And so I want him to kind of go get his deal. Just keep it on me. Drop. Good. Or yes. So when I use the cue, I don't want to say drop, 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 drop. If he doesn't know what it means, he's just practicing not listening to that word. So when he has something, we use a marker word first so he understands what it is. So he has it in his mouth. Let's see if he'll do it. Nope. But he has got it in his mouth. What I do is I just hold the treat up or I put the treat down. And then as soon as he drops it, I say yes. And I don't show any interest in the item. And then he gets the treat. Then he gets his original stuff back. Teaching her how to drop isn't always something you have to do for resource guarding, but it's helpful if your dog does grab shoes or something like that. If you train them to drop the low value items when they have the high value item and you say drop, sure, that means I drop it and get a treat. And if that's the case, let's say he had a shoe. I'd say drop, or I'd held it up, he drops it. I say good, or yes, excuse me, and show him that I have the treat. And then put the treat in his mouth, and then I throw one over there. Then I can pick up the item. He has vacated the area, and then I can pick up the item and take it away. Now, if I do take an item away that he has possession of, I want to give him something of equal or greater value. I'd probably give him another one of our best bully sticks or something like that. So that way he doesn't feel like he's losing out in the situation. Yeah, you took the shoe, but I got something even better to chew on, so I don't feel like I lost in that situation. So a marker word is the word that you use to identify when the dog does the thing that you want. A cue is the word that tells the dog what to do. So you don't want to use the cue, like come or sit or lay down, unless you're 90% when you say that cue, the dog's going to do the action. If not, then you just lure the dog. Yes. So as soon as his butt hits the ground, I lured him into a sit. As soon as he did what I wanted, I said yes to let him know what that was. Then I put a treat in his mouth. So this helps the dog better understand what it is that you want, and that accelerates the learning process. It builds confidence in the dog. It reduces frustration in you and the dog, and it puts, you can't see it, but he's got a smile on his face. Like, you got to smile for the camera. So using marker words is really important. So at first we just use the marker word only. Then eventually we might switch over to using the marker word. So let's say that he knows how to sit, which he does. I would still go lure him, come here, sit, yes, treat. There's nothing wrong with using both of them. A lot of people, once they're not going to say sit and he sits, stop using the marker word. It's a personal preference. You can, or you can continue saying it. There's nothing wrong with saying it or not saying it, as long as the dog knows. But the goal is eventually to say sit, the dog sits, and then I pet or give a reward. Remember, you only have 2 seconds for the dog sitting or whatever it is to say the marker word, but really it should come the instant the butt hits the ground. And if the marker word is marking something that has duration, so like for example, if I want to mark him drinking water, he goes over and starts drinking water. If I say good, yes, while he's drinking, he'll stop drinking, come over and get the treat. So what I wait for is the conclusion or the epiphany of the activity. So he's drinking, he stops, yes, and then he looks at me because yes means somebody's owing me a treat, and he sees a treat and comes over and he gets rewarded. So if I drink water, I get a treat. Then what you do is you sneak that cue in there. You know he's thirsty. You know he gets up and he's walking straight over to the beeline to the water. You say agua or water or cocktail or whatever the word is you want to use. Then he drinks the water. He was going to drink it anyways. We're just being anticipatory and being mindful by observing him. He goes over and drinks. We say yes when he gets done and give him that treat. And after a while, now we could say cocktails, and he goes over and drinks and then gets that treat afterwards. So you can use this principle for anything you're teaching your dog to do, and it's really helpful. Yeah, now you're giving me the great smiles when I don't have my camera. My camera's over there. We're filming right now, and you give me the great smiles. Okay, so that's marker words. We also went over a hand targeting exercise. Now, he has been taught to shake, so he was trying to put his paw in there. So what I'd like you to do when you're doing that is walk around. So if he paws at your hand, we don't do any reward. There's no punishment, no correction. But we just take a couple steps away, and then flash your hand again. And once you flash your hand, let's see if I can do one here. So then I would pull back and chop closer. Yes. Then I put that treat in the hand. So eventually you can use this as an alternative way of recalling. Hand targeting is actually something you can also use to teach your dog to heel or walk with a loose leash. You hold your hand here, he's walking with his hand on your nose. There's a lot, and we can build onto it using a touch stick to teach the dog to turn the lights on and off, open a refrigerator, and do all sorts of different cool tricks. So hand targeting is also something that we can use for consent. Because you have a dog that has resource guarding, if I suspect he might be resource guarding and he has a very strong hand targeting, and he freezes and I go touch or target, I think is the word you used, and then he comes over here, then he's no longer near the item to guard, and I might have read that wrong, or even if I read it right, he's no longer in the guarding area. But if I go like this and he doesn't come to me, maybe I read that right, maybe he is guarding. So I'm not going to go over to his area. So it's a way of judging his consent. For dogs, if I want to pet a dog, I hold my hand out here in front and see how he leaned in? So he said, you have my consent, so I reached over to pet him. If I hold my hand out and he turns his head to the side, lowers his head, backs away, or doesn't look at me, he's saying, no, I don't want to engage with you. And a lot of times we pet the dogs anyways, and that eventually leads the dog to bite and nip us because we're not listening to what they're saying. And so we want to make sure the dog understands. We might not agree with what the dog is saying, but then we can create a scenario where the dog doesn't have access to shoes, if they're guarding shoes or whatever it is. That's our responsibility as the guardians to provide a safe environment. So if a kid is, a little one, we don't let them run around with scissors or have access to scissors because they don't know any better. So for dogs, if your dog gets in trouble, we need to be kind of mindful of if we can control the environment. It's called management. Okay, so hand targeting, practice that one. And all the other stuff I'm going over here, I have videos on how to do. So if you forget how to do any of these things, please text me. I'm happy to send you a link to the hand targeting or cooking in the corner or any of the stuff we've gone over. Okay, we also went over petting with a purpose, which is essentially teaching dogs manners. So basically, if he comes up to me and paws at me, this is one of the reasons I don't like teaching the shake, but he paws at me saying, give me your attention. And most of us, we love our dogs, so we reach over and pet them. Well, that validates that. So we're teaching the dog, if you want me to pet you, come and paw at me. Well, if I'm wearing a white dress, I'm probably not going to want him come up to paw at me with dirty paws. I'm going to be upset with that. Or a delicate fabric or something like that, he might rip it. So it's kind of teaching him not necessarily the best boundaries, and that's one of the things his previous guardian taught him. I would just not practice that because it's just, I find it's a lot confusing. It's very confusing for dogs. You can get back to it later on, but right now he doesn't know please and thank you. So what I want to do is next time he paws at you or nudges you with his paw or barks at you for attention, you're going to tell him to sit or to lay down. If he's already sitting here, we tell him to sit here or here. If he's already tell him to lay down. We're only going to tell him one time, provided he knows how to do that cue. If he does it, then I'm going to say the marker word yes, and then I'm going to pet him under the chin, on the chest, or on the shoulders. Pet him as much or as little as I want. If I say sit, and I know he knows how to sit, and he doesn't sit, I'm not going to ask him 10 times. I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to correct him. I'm going to disengage, and I'm going to do something else. Playing hard to get works great for dating, works great for dog training. So if you don't do what I want, that's okay. You do you. I'm on to the next thing. Who's missing out in this equation? He's not getting the attention he wanted. After a while, he's going to recognize every time that I want attention from Mom, she asks me to sit. So I'm just going to go sit in front of her to prepay for the attention. When he does, you bet your butt, you better say your marker word and pet him. Otherwise, he can go back to pawing at you. Good attention, bad attention, the same thing. Let's tell him the attention he can provide us through the do-over concept that parents do with kids. Mommy, I don't like this turkey. Go make me some chicken nuggets. Would you like to ask for that again, sweetheart? Mom, can I please have chicken nuggets? And Mom tries to go and do that. So she gives a do-over. If the child does it right, then they get the reward. So the dog demands attention. We ask for a do-over, sit. If they sit, then we say yes and pet them. And then they get that attention. If they don't, we're on to the next thing, and that motivates them more at the next time. We use the watchword of manners or politeness. So let's say that I'm petting him. Let's say he's standing, and his guardian comes in the room. She could say, David, manners. Manners means I think you forgot to ask the dog to do something to ask for that attention. Now, so if even I would stop petting him, even if I did it right, I would tell him to sit. When he sits, I'd say yes and pet him on the chin. And I would turn and tell my partner, I actually asked the dog to sit, but you didn't see it because when you opened the door, he stood up and I continued petting him. But thank you, I do forget to pet. Pet for manners or pet for purpose, which is what I like to call this. Now, can we pet our dog for no reason? Absolutely. But a lot of times we are unaware of what the dog is doing when we're petting it. So he might be pawing at us and we're watching TV, we're not paying attention, we reach over and pet him. That makes him more likely to do that behavior again. So what I'd like to do is for 2 months, I'd like you to try to refrain from petting him unless he's doing things you want. So it's getting close to the end of the year. So maybe come January 2nd, you can go back to petting him for no reason. But for those next 2 months, you're not asking a lot to ask for a sit or a down. And if he sits, then we pet him and give him as much attention. If he doesn't, then he doesn't get that attention. That will create this motivation and teach him manners, so he'll start sitting in front of you to prepay and ask for that attention. Okay, so that's what I like to call petting with a purpose. If you get in a habit of doing that, every time you pet your dog, it increases the dog's respect for you as an authority figure. It boosts the dog's confidence because he's earning the attention versus getting it for being good looking. It's helping him practice basic obedience. And number 4, it makes your pets more valuable because you're not giving them out willy-nilly. Yeah. All right. So that the flip side of that is something I call celebrating, or a lot of trainers call it capturing. It's waiting for the dog to voluntarily offer you a behavior that you like and marking it and then rewarding it. Remember, good attention and bad attention is the same thing. So if 25% of the time when the dog sits, I pet it, the other 75% I'm watching TV, I'm writing a song, I'm eating or doing something else, and so I don't reward the dog when it does the behavior that I want. But every time he chews my shoes or barks or whatever it is, I immediately correct him. Well, if I want your attention, and I don't care if it's good attention or bad attention, I'm going to do what gets your attention more often. 100% of the time, if I chew this dog bed, you say, no, don't do that. 25% of the time, if I sit, you do that. Which one am I going to do? The one that gets my attention more often. So let's make the things that he does to get our attention the things that we want. Eye contact, which will help you on your walks. Sitting, laying down. Drinking water, like I talked about, teaching a dog to stretch, name all your individual toys. He brings you this one, call it, I don't know, steer, I don't know, whatever it is. And so each dog has its, so he grabs one, you say yes, and then after a while, that steer is like here, and you know what he's going to do. You say steer, and he picks it up, and you can pet it. You say yes when he picks it up and pet him, as long as it's not something he's going to guard, or give him a treat. The problem with toys is if you give him a treat, he's going to drop the toy. So it kind of can confuse the drop. So I might just pet him or just say, but again, saying the marker word lets him know that we like. But we want to make sure we're always trying to follow that marker word with a pet or a treat. But having a better, more robust vocabulary will accelerate his learning, have a deeper relationship with you, remove a lot of the ambiguity, remove a lot of the stress, which comes from frustration. So it really is beneficial. Also, earlier we were doing an exercise and the guardian said his name to come. So I'd like you to sit down and come up with a list of the official command words for or cues for Copper. How do we say come? Do we come, here, come here, over here boy, dog's name, whistle, tap my thigh, and something else. That's 10 different ways of asking him to do something that all mean the same thing if you speak English. For him, it's 10 words that he has to learn. If he knows 10 cues, and each one has 10 expressions, that's 100 words he has to listen to. As humans, we say between 2,000 and 11,000 words a day. That's a lot of listening, and it just is very difficult. It's the same sensation the dogs get as we get when we're taking French or German or Spanish in high school, and the teacher says, "Donde está la biblioteca?" You're like, you asked where the library is. And then I say, okay, students, I would like you to pick up your books and open to page 364 and go to chapter 12, and we're going to do the exercise. But it's all in Spanish. Your brain swims in all the vocabulary. It makes you feel frustrated. You don't know what's going on, and so that's creating a negative association. So if you make a list of the command cues, and you always say come, or here, or whatever it is, and let's say our partner says, come here, you're like, vocabulary, or it's Alex Trebek, or whatever you want to say, come up with a watchword, and he's thank you, come. So if we consolidate and use one word, it's easier for him. He's going to pick up on it faster because we're making it easier, and we're going to have a better, richer vocabulary. So that's petting with a purpose and passive training. Or celebrating. Petting with a purpose is if you would like to pet your dog, or your dog is asking you for attention, you tell it to sit or lie down. If it does, you pet it. You say your mark word and pet it. If it doesn't, you play hard to get. Celebrating is when the dog voluntarily does things that you did not ask, but are things that you do like. You make sure you say the marker word and reward them. And if you can anticipate it, you try to say water right before he drinks the water. Then he gets done drinking, you say your marker word, and then pet him or give him the attention. We also talked about doggy exercise. We live in an apartment here, and so he doesn't have a yard, and so he doesn't get as much exercise as probably his guardians would like. So she takes him out on a couple walks a day, which is great. But for dogs, they need exercise periodically throughout the day. So sniffing on walks, sniffing burns more energy than walking, and as long as it's safe to do so, let him sniff. Not only that, but we can also get him a doggy backpack, provided his vet says it's okay and he doesn't have any mobility issues. He can carry bottles of water or bags of sand. That makes the walk more efficient. We can play games of fetch if the dog likes to do it. He does not. We can play tug of war. He does not. But those are nice ways to burn energy. Play dates are also great ways to burn energy because he doesn't like getting along with other dogs. Probably not a great option for him. So we're kind of a little bit limited in the physical activities we can do, but there's another side of the coin, mental stimulation. So I would recommend to the guardians that they get a snuffle mat. If he eats his food out of a snuffle mat, he's working for his food. It slows down the feeding process, and it gets the benefit of almost like getting an extra walk if you're feeding him 2 or 3 times a day. We could also get treat dispensing toys. Now, these are also things that he could potentially guard. So we got to be mindful and watch the video above and all that fun stuff. So he does guard it. Maybe you put the food deal over there so he's far in the kitchen when he's doing that. And that way you have more room in your apartment to walk around and toss the treats like we showed you. But basically, snuffle mat is a great way to burn some excess energy. Sniff walks burns energy physically as well as mentally. We can also do training. Training is a great way to burn energy mentally. We also went over cookie in the corner, where we throw in the treats in the corner, and that's the introduction to scent games. And I'd like the guardians to Google scent games. There's a whole bunch of different scent games out there. Dogs' nose controls roughly 2/3 of their brain, and so if they're sniffing to get things, then they're draining energy, and we're also giving them something to do. So instead of getting in trouble or mischief, they're relaxing, and we're depleting that energy, especially on days when it's really crappy outside. And so we get the dog to burn that energy or be mentally satisfied. He likes to lick a lot. I would definitely recommend the guardians get a lick mat. A lick mat is a silicone mat that you can smear peanut butter or like, what else could we put on? Frozen yogurt. And then the dog licks it. Licking and chewing release endorphins. It makes the dog feel good. It's something they do when they're stressed out. So if you can do those, pull one of those things out once a day and he licks up peanut butter, you're helping him lick in an appropriate place and taking care of that need by giving him an appropriate thing to lick, as opposed to licking me or my face or my guardian or my shoes or whatever else it is. So the idea is to come up with an kind of a rhythm that is reasonable for your lifestyle. So maybe you get up and take him for a walk in the morning, and then and after physical exercise, he needs about 10 minutes to rest before the next thing happens. So you take him out for a walk and you do his business. Then after you get back for your 15-20-minute walk, you take him off the leash, you go shower, do your morning ritual, you get done, he's recovered. Now we feed him out of a snuffle mat. Now, after doing that, he probably has to potty, take him outside to potty again, give him a little bit of time to recover, and then we put him in the kennel, we go to work, do the work, then the dog walker comes, or you come back home from work, let him out, and maybe feed him out a snack out of a snuffle mat. So again, I'm getting some more exercise. Maybe take him out for another little walk, and then then maybe I give him a Kong filled with peanut butter when I put him back in his kennel. So it gives him something else to do. Then we come home, we do a training exercise, we do cookie in the corner an hour after that, 2 hours after that, we go for a short walk, an hour after that, we do another treat dispensing toy or something along those lines. The idea is to come up with a rhythm so that you're getting alternating between physical exercise and mental stimulation every 2 to 4 hours or so. And we can also use exercise to set them up for success. If we're having a whole bunch of guests come over, take them out for a long walk before. Don't overdo it. We want that Goldilocks amount. And then after the walk, we come back and basically let him and then the guests come over, they're like, oh my God, Copper is just so well behaved. You're like, of course, we hired David Doggone Problems. He hooked us up. But what we do, we're cheating. We're setting him up for success by satisfying his needs. And then when the guest comes, maybe we have the lick mat way over there. So the guests are over here talking. He's over there content licking away. And when he gets done licking, that's a great way to burn energy. He's like, hey, man, how's it going? I'm going to take a nap right over here. Again, an appearance of a well-behaved dog. We also talked about the importance of rules. A lot of us think of rules as a negative. We don't enforce rules, and that can confuse a dog into am I the leader or the follower or whatnot. A lot of people have heard the expression alpha dog. There's actually no such thing. Dogs do not have rules and leaders and followers. Alpha wolves. For wolves, they do it in the wild. It's a family. Mother and father, they have offspring twice a year, and the offspring stays with them until they're 3 years old. Same thing. You don't challenge your dad because your dad is the one who took care of you, is nurturing you, educating you, your dad disciplines you, but that's not why you listen. So for a lot of us, when we especially have rescue dogs, we feel like, I'm not going to have any rules for you, I'm going to let you do everything, but that almost makes them feel overwhelmed by the world. So rules and structure, I define a rule as things the dog likes to do, wants to do, has the ability to do, but doesn't do without an invitation or permission. So some of the rules I suggested is not being allowed to be on the carpeted area when the guardians are eating food in this area right here. Not being allowed in the kitchen when we're preparing food. Now, how do we do that? So I went over this real quickly with the guardians in person, but just the reminder is what we do is we break the activity down into small individual steps or slices and practice the first step over and over and over a couple times until the dog's got it. Then we go to the next step. And then we practice that one a couple times. And then we go to the next step and the dog can't do that and gets up or moves away or whatever it is. Then we're like, oh, I asked for too much criteria. So I back up to the previous level of success, or sometimes even more than that, or a quarter of a step back or whatever it is, get success, and then practice that a couple times, then try to go to the next one. So if we're going in the kitchen, we try preparing food, we're distracted, our timing's poor, there's smells, we're making it way, way, way more difficult. So instead, we exercise him a little bit beforehand, we let him have 10 minutes to relax, and then we basically, I had her put the dog, we called it place or spot. So remember to do that circle every time he gets out. So circle, so spot, circle him, and then as soon as he sits down, yes, give him that treat. Take one step back, come back and say yes, give him the treat. Do that a couple times, then go to 2 steps, eventually 3 steps, 4 steps. This will be something that will take multiple practice sessions. It's not gonna happen overnight. We often get greedy and ask for too much criteria, and then the dog fails, and then we get frustrated. It's really important that the last repetition of each practice session is a good positive one, because that's the freshest memory they're going to have. We want them to feel that and remember that in a good positive way, as opposed to like, oh, I don't want to play that kitchen game. You got really mad last time. Let's just do something else instead, because you got frustrated because we asked for too much criteria. Now, I went over this on how to teach the dog to stay out of the kitchen, but we can use this for really anything. One other thing I forgot to go over with the guardians I'm going to go over right now is something called a PREMAC. A PREMAC means a less desirable, it's PREMAC principle. Less desirable behavior earns me a more desirable behavior. For example, your parents might say, you can go out with your friends after you do your chores. You can play the video game after you do your homework. I don't want to do my homework, but I want to play the video game, so I do something, a less desirable behavior. I do my homework. That earns me the more desirable behavior of being able to play the video games with my friends or whatever it is. So when you're letting out his kennel, tell him to sit. As long as he's not been in there too long, we have to be mindful of that as well. But when we come home, if he's all excited, tell him to sit. And if he sits, then I open the kennel door right away. If he doesn't sit, then I might wait a minute before I let him out. Now, we don't want to do this again if a dog's in a kennel for too long. But if your dog really struggles with this, how can we make it easier? Well, instead of doing it when he's in a kennel for 4 hours, let's put him in the kennel, close the door, tell him to sit. As soon as he sits, open the door and let him out. So it's only for half a second. So it's not, and then eventually we have him sit in there. We wait 1 second before we sit, and then tell him to sit, and then we open the door. And eventually we might tell him to sit. He sits, and I wait 1 second before I say yes and open the door. Next time I might say sit, wait 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Eventually it gets to the point where, and I could also break down opening the door. So I could maybe, so I tell him to sit, he sits, and I reach a little bit for it, pull my hand back, and give him a treat, provided he stayed in a sit. Because when I reach for it, that's exciting. You're about to open the door. I'm going to run out and run like crazy. So instead what we do is we break it down to small steps. Sit, he sits, yes, give him the treat. Now I reach partially, if the handle is right here, I reach this much, pull my hand back, yes, give him a treat. Next time I reach this far. Next time I'm actually reaching, almost touching it. Next time I might touch it and jiggle it. And then if like I jiggle it and he gets up, oh, that's too much. So I back up, ask him to sit, and I might go back to this one, the one right before the jiggle, do that a couple times. Then I might jiggle it once, just very lightly, yes, and give him a treat. I make the level easy enough for him to be able to perform the way that I want, and I'm training him, this is the behavior that I want. And eventually you can get to the point through doing all these stages. Eventually you jiggle it more, then eventually you latch it, but don't open it, and latch it again, then he gets a treat if he stays seated. Then you eventually open it a little bit and close it, latch it, give him a treat. Eventually you're doing this little by little, then 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. Eventually you open the door all the way. I'm just sitting there waiting for you with the door wide open, waiting for you to give me permission to come out. You won't get there overnight. It's going to take some practice. When you do get to the point where the door is open, I would when you're ready, I would drop the treat and say like release or free or whatever the word that means you can exit the kennel. So I drop the treat, that's going to cause him to go for it. And so now we've created a release word. So I come in, I open the door, you stay in there because I've conditioned and taught you to do so. And when you hear the word release, then you run out. What is the dog doing when he's in there with the kennel is closed? He's practicing some self-restraint. He has some separation anxiety. Separation anxiety is a lack of practice of being alone, but it's also a lack of impulse control. So we help him practice sitting before I get exit of the kennel, sitting before she prepares her food, sitting before she even puts the food in the bowl. We can also do this for sitting before I open the door to go outside. I usually recommend this for sitting, and then I open the door as soon as the dog sits, but you have to take him out on a leash or put your lead on. But the idea is we, again, incorporate these rules We help the dog practice listening to us, being rewarded for listening to us, rewarded for self-restraint, and helping them by not asking too much criteria. And eventually we can make that bigger and bigger, just like any activity or that we do or that requires discipline. We do a little bit and we get better at it, and as our confidence, then we go to a higher level from elementary school to junior high to high school. It's the same principle for dogs, but oftentimes we don't do that. Let me see. We also, what else did we talk about? I guess that's pretty much the extent of what we covered here, as opposed to what I covered in the resource guarding. Just a quick note for the resource guarding. When that happens, I would probably try to do 5 to 10 passes of tossing those treats when he gets in resource guarding mode. And when he gets in resource guarding mode, think about this as this is an opportunity for me to help him get better at it. So make sure you have treats over in the cupboard over there, all over the place. So no matter where he resource guards, you can reach over here in your little cupboard and you can toss those treats and gradually collapse that distance like we talked in the video above. Copper. Yes. What did I do there? I just made it easier. This is too much criteria. I tried half. That was too much criteria. I just kept on going until I got to the point where he could actually do it. Yes. So I'm going at his pace, not at my pace. We often go at our pace. We're a little bit arrogant, and then the dog is a little bit doesn't able to do what we want because we have unrealistic expectations. So always go at your dog's pace. Copper, sit. Yes. Wait for it, and then say your mark word. This is my buddy Copper, and this is Copper's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.